Hello and welcome to Extra Bad Gays, your monthly podcast from the hosts of the Bad Gays podcast. For all our loyal Patreon subscribers, thank you so much for your support. It really does help keep the show on the road. Sorry, I'm just knocking apart the studio here. My name's Hugh. You might not recognise me from my voice this time. I've got a bit of a I'm sick. You already knew that, Ben.
I did already know that.
But I am a sick puppy at the moment.
Oh no, and I'm making you record as a sick puppy freshly back from holiday, which is very mean of me, but we wanted to get this episode out to our subscribers before the end of the month.
Yeah, I'm going to be making liberal use of the mute button, I think, the cough button on this episode. I had a very, very beautiful time up in the Pyrenees. I went on a hiking holiday with my dad and my brothers, but I went there already having something, and then 2 days in got trapped on the top of a 2,000-meter mountain in an electrical storm with, I think it's the wettest I've been in my entire life. I felt like I was wetter than if I'd been swimming. It was really soaking into every crevice, and we made a hurried escape back down to a mountain hut for the day. But yeah, my cold has got a lot worse since then. So apologies for my voice. Anyway, I'm Hugh Lemmy, and this is...
My name is Ben Miller. You know who I am if you listen to the show, and thanks, of course, come from me as well. And yeah, it's nice to be back. I don't know, I still have that, speaking as someone who completed a PhD, or as I refer to it, the 27th grade, I still have that feeling of September as being the actual beginning of the year. Like we get into late September and it feels like this is kind of the new year. This is the beginning. Weird. I can talk about that with my analyst, thinking about fall, a season of beginnings when everything withers and dies and falls off the trees and the days become shorter and colder. But I'm, also enjoying the beginning of fall. I've had the chance to start seeing a lot of really exceptional performances recently, which has been is always a nice treat of living in Berlin. This last Thursday, heard a particularly impactful performance of the Mahler's Eighth Symphony, which is kind of pure, uncut 19th century gigantism for giant orchestra, extra brass section, 9 solo singers, 2 choruses, and children's chorus. The first movement is the text of the Pentecostal hymn, and the second movement is the final scene of Faust.
Keeping it light.
But then it weirdly is, like, it's actually so tacky. Everything is sort of constantly climaxing, and I don't know, you haven't really lived until you've heard a giant chorus screaming as loudly as possible with full orchestra, 9 solo singers, brass section, and pipe organ singing "All that is ephemeral is only a simile for the incomplete, which is here fulfilled," as the great conclusion.
I can practically visualize you vibrating in your seat.
Well, Anyway, and it ends with an evocation of the eternal feminine, of course, the 2 kinds of women, those being virgins and mothers, but the 2 genders of women. Let's go from the 2 genders of women to a community that seems to have absolutely no women in it. Our first topic today is a slightly old story. This article came out 2 or 3 days after we released the August edition of Extra Bad Gays, and then because of holidays and stuff, we've ended up recording pretty late in the month for this month. But we still wanted to talk about it because it is so perfectly in our wheelhouse that I think our comment is requested. It's an article that I think ran in both the politics and style sections of the New York Times under the headline, "Donald Trump's Big Gay Government," with the subhead, "On the Town with the A-Gays of Washington Who Have Never Been Happier to Be Out, Proud, and Republican."
Yeah, it's a fascinating article. It's about the sort of birth or prominence of a new gay elite within not just Trump's administration, but within the sort of Republican right of apparatchiks and Washingtonians and civil servants and whatnot who he surrounds himself with, and within that crowd, a sort of new gay elite. I really enjoyed the article. I thought it was very interesting. I wish it'd been more colour, There was, at the start, he sort of does a bit of scene setting, but I kind of could guess these people already exist. I want to know just quite how awful they are as people, and there's some sort of little catty comments. So I was already sort of casting them in a sort of Ryan Murphy adaptation in 25 years' time with a sort of aged Tom Hollander or something.
Oh God, don't flatter them. I mean, we are introduced in the beginning of the article to a bar where, it might not be as happening as your local gay bar, but this is apparently where they're all hanging out, a private club around the corner from the White House called Ned. And also you can meet Dr. Oz there, So I bet your local gay bar doesn't have
There's-
Dr. Oz.
I mean, it's got a fair few quacks, but not Dr. Oz. And so this sort of description of these slightly catty, clearly very powerful and horrible men sat around this gay club sort of chatting about the boys and meanwhile orchestrating and sort of coordinating Project 2025 is quite a vision. And I just wish there'd been a bit more of that colour because, yeah, I think that's more interesting to me than the main headline, which is that Washington, even on the right, is full of quite powerful, quite strange, white gay men.
And
Is that news? That doesn't strike me as news.
no, and I mean, there's a whole category of like DNC gay who are also their own sort of unique flavor of hell. Although, at least a flavor of hell that's coherent within a certain vision of liberal LGBT politics. Although, as I think I've said on this show, that kind of politics is firmly in its flop era. We're introduced in the piece to a guy named Charles Moran, who works at the National Nuclear Security Administration, and who is also described as the, quote, pasha of a new power tribe in the Capitol, which is the A-gays of the Trump administration. And he says, we're like Visa, everywhere you want to be. There's a little detail of just how awful this person is. I did see, funnily today, it wasn't connected to this article at all, but it was sort of why I made that joke earlier about a world with no women in it. This is an article with, I think, no women in it. Lesbians are too smart for this shit. There was a study of basically the gender balance or imbalance, as it were, of the LGBT population in different U.S. states. I think they have this from like domestic partnership data. And so of the people in states who are in same-sex partnerships, right? Some of whom will be gay and lesbian and some of whom will be bi and whatever. The most lopsided gender splits are Vermont, which is about 70% of those are lesbians, and DC, which is 70% or so of those are gay guys. So there is something about this kind of political work that brings in this particular kind of gay guy. And if you've ever been to the Capitol for any reason, like, I've been a couple times just to like, as a tourist or like to go on like a school trip or something, there's just like gay guys swanning about everywhere. Like it must be some vastly disproportionate number of the people who work in these congressional offices. And what's interesting to me about this particular thing is how, in a way, again, it's being presented as this kind of grand surprise, but nothing in this would be surprising to anyone who'd read the last chapter of our book, which is about the Dutch far-right politician Pim Fortuyn. We make this prediction in there that basically, so in most Western democracies, there has been an LGBT voting bloc which has behaved more like itself than like the other things that the people in that bloc are. This means that until pretty recently, a white gay man working at a law firm and a working class black lesbian clocking in at Walmart would have often been expected, and not just through some sort of misguided sense of identity, but truly this is what was borne out, would have been expected to vote much more similarly than you would expect them to, given the other differences, the sort of tremendous differences between them. Yeah, and what's happened...
The fact he's a rich white man working at a law firm is not a powerful indicator as to his voting preferences as his homosexuality.
Exactly. And that is starting to change. That coherence is beginning to break up. One thing that I always like to remind people, though, I mean, so on the one hand, we make this prediction that this is what's happening. And on the other hand, it's like white gay men of an elevated class status are, on average, more progressive significantly than white heterosexual men of the same class status. So there is still an effect, but it's no longer as consistent, and you see it starting to break up. What's really interesting is some of the countries where the right has more fully embraced at least a certain vision of LGBT politics have really managed to break that up entirely, right? Like in France, where the National Rally, or whatever the Le Pen Front is, has kind of, at least on a surface level, moved past a very homophobic origin. I mean, its homophobic origins were the plot of La Cage aux Folles, right? But as a friend of mine sadly said to me when La Cage aux Folles premiered in Berlin, these days, those guys, right, aging gay bar owners, petty bourgeois gay bar owners in the south of France would vote for Marine Le Pen. In other words, MAGA is paying a price in terms of the support of gay people for this kind of vicious homo and transphobia, but there are people who are willing to overlook it, and I think that's not really any different from any other time or place. It's just that now these people are able and willing to live openly and not be the closeted queens of the Nixon administration, right, or the closeted queens of the Reagan administration.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I got from reading the article, which I feel like perhaps wasn't pointed out so much, which is that has there actually been a demographic shift in terms of more gay men working for the right? I mean, very hard to know statistically. I would say probably not. The difference is here, we're now at a point where those people are willing to be interviewed on the records using their names for the New York Times. That's the change that's happened in the last 10 to 20 years, probably just 10 years, in fact. I don't think you would have had the same impact at all, the same results at all if you tried to write this article in 2015. But that in itself is a really interesting moment, because it's not that these people are shifting to the right, these gay men are shifting to the right, it's that these gay men who've always existed are now publicly identifying as gay men. They're not closeted, they're not getting married to women as cover. They can sort of bring together their social and political identities in that way and socialize with each other. And then what are the effects of this? Like, does it remove some degree of blackmail power from their lives, which potentially makes them more powerful? And it also puts them in more open contact with other gay men in a similar positions in terms of networking. Ironically, this idea of the Comintern that was sort of emerging in the 1940s and 50s as a fear in America of a sort of, let's say, pink mafia who will come around and break your coffee table legs, is now really starting to sort of be solidified more explicitly, it seems, in this article, that these gay men are socializing with each other because they have the same politics, partly because they claim that they're excluded from most gay spaces, LGBTQ spaces, because those spaces are implicitly progressive in the US sense of the word. Is that a victory for the gay rights movement, the traditional gay rights movement? Is it not a victory that we're in a position where those people can come out and choose, have a degree of autonomy around how they live their sexual lives without fear of repercussions in terms of their employment?
Yeah, I mean, that's the argument certainly that they make, right? The argument that they make pretty explicitly in the article is that they are living proof, essentially, that this administration is not particularly homophobic. Now, I think
that... No, that's not quite a point I'm making. That's not quite a point I'm making. Not that this movement, this particular administration is not homophobic. The question is this a victory for the traditional gay rights movement?
Yes, and I agree with you. Yes, and that is how these people are presenting it. That's what I mean. Like, the people working in this administration explicitly present their presence as evidence of the success of the gay rights movement, to the point where they can now work for this administration.